morning from Australia, it's Ruthie. I'm going to be reading to you chapter 7 of my ghostly mystery story, A Haunting in Berrima. All rights are reserved by me. If you want to reproduce the story, please get in touch. Also, Claudine, the ladybug, who features rather heavily in the story, is the creation of Marion Agradko, and I'm using her by permission. So if you want to use Claudine, please get in touch with Marion Agradko before doing so. Well, in our last chapter, some rather dreadful things happened to Debbie and David. They managed to escape the dastardly Professor Snot, but only by jumping into the car of Miss Polewidth, who's a complete nutter, and tried to take them to an abandoned train station to look at graffiti, which she thought was the highest form of art she'd ever heard of. So they managed to escape from her, and then they whizzed off to the National Art Gallery of New South Wales because they knew she wouldn't go to an actual art gallery because obviously her standards in art were unique. Anyway, they managed to escape, and then while they were there, oh dear, Professor Snot had the same idea. So they had to quickly change plans, and they went to the National Library of New South Wales, and that's when they found out that Claudine is very, very pivotal to this story. And they had to rush home by train to try and beat Professor Snot home to Uncle Octavius's house because they know where the ladybug balloon from the golf course is and they don't want Professor Snot to get it. So, this is chapter 7, A Haunting in Berrima, a very important phone call. Let us begin. Thank goodness we bet Professor Snot home. David felt under the doormat and pulled out the key. We'd better hurry, he can't be far behind us. Debbie started to run for the stairs. Suddenly the phone rang. They looked at the phone. Should we pick it up? It might be Professor Snot. No, it might not be either. You pick it up. Debbie picked up the phone. Hello? She asked cautiously. David hovered close enough to hear. Is that you, Debbie? This is Uncle Octavius here. I can't talk long, but I must tell you, Professor Snot is not who he says he is. I've been turning things around in my mind. Jail gives you a lot of time to think. And I think I know him. I used to go to school with a ghastly toad of a boy. He was called Cauldron, but his last name wasn't Snot. It was Bubble. I never really liked him. He was always throwing stones at dogs and not sharing his lollipops. But it all came to an ugly head at the local junior inventors fair. Cauldron was too lazy to come up with his own idea, so he tried to steal my invention. I had invented a donut duplicator. You put a normal donut in one end, punched in the number of donuts you wanted, and suddenly you had donuts galore. Of course, Cauldron couldn't come up with anything as good as that. He thought he was a genius, but he couldn't even spell the word. Always spelled it Janyz. The night before the fair, he snuck into the garage where I was keeping the donut duplicator. He left me his pathetic attempt at a toilet paper periscope, but I had suspected Cauldron would try something like that. I had programmed the donut duplicator with a self-destructing feature that would come into effect if the incorrect password was punched in during the startup phase. Well, there we were at the fair. I had just endured a scathing dressing down from the judge over Cauldron's awful toilet paper periscope. It was terribly annoying, but I put up with it because I knew for a fact that Cauldron wouldn't be taking home any prize himself. The self-destructing feature surpassed my wildest hopes. To this day, I am prouder of what happened than I am of the duplicating aspect of my invention. It exploded. It blew cream and jam and powdered sugar everywhere. It was glorious. It set off all the fire alarms. 8 fire engines came, and when the firemen found nothing but exploded donut duplicator, they were furious. They called the police, and Cauldron was hauled away for questioning. As the siren screamed and the lights whirled, Cauldron leaned out of the car window and he bellowed, "I'll get you for that, Montgomery! One day I'll take one of your inventions and I'll use it in a horrible crime, and then everyone in the world will hate you!" I dare say he would have said more, but a policeman pulled him back into the car. I thought at the time that it was hilarious. I laughed so hard my ribs hurt for 5 days. But now I do not think it is quite so funny. In fact, I think it is very worrying. I can only conclude somehow he has heard about Gamaliel. Now, whatever happens, children, you must not let Cauldron Bubble get his hands on my clockwork giant. I don't know what horrible crime he is planning, but if he ever gets his hands on my clockwork giant... A car's coming up the driveway, said Debbie. It's the fake Professor Snot, yelped David. Hide, ordered Uncle Octavious from the phone. Don't let him catch you. He's a very savage boy. I can't imagine he's any better as a grown-up man. The line went dead. There was a sound of a car stopping and a door opening. David and Debbie looked frantically around for a place to hide. Quick, the boot cupboard, said David. They rushed towards it. It was built into the entrance of the house, and it was just big enough for both of them to squeeze into. They made it with only a minute to spare. The front door opened, and the fake professor came in. He was not alone. I'm sure those horrible children have something to do with Claudine vanishing from the golf course, he was saying. I ought to have come here at once, but I had a meeting with our contact. A woman's loud, shrill voice answered. There you go again, keeping secrets from me. Won't even tell me what the contact's name is. Don't trust me, you don't. You're right, I don't, sneered Cauldron Bubble. Not after that stupid stunt you played, renaming yourself Claudine, and after we all agreed that Claudine was the best book to use to blend into this town. I didn't expect you to go slapping the name all over garish circus posters. Well, how am I supposed to become a big star with a name like Jezebel Plank? I needed something with a bit more sizzle. Of course, her tone became speculative. I suppose Jezebel Bubble sounds quite nice, doesn't it? We're not discussing that, said Cauldron hastily. A quick rapping on the front door made him jump. Hide, he hissed at Jezebel. She darted into the library. Cauldron strode towards the door and threw it open. Oh, Professor Snot, wailed Miss Polewidth. I've lost those ghastly children. I lost them before I could take them down into a dark tunnel to look at graffiti. Oh, this is terrible. What will my psychic say? What will the stars say? I have failed to cooperate with my horoscope, and now the balance of the cosmos is in jeopardy. I was hoping you might know where they were. Cauldron looked at Miss Polewidth for a long time with slitty eyes. How well do you know Octavious Montgomery? He asked. Too well, said Miss Polewidth, moving on from the jeopardized cosmos and the lost children with lightning speed. He's an awful man. He ruined the Southern Highlands garden tour last year by growing some foul, stinking weed instead of tulips. He didn't bother to tell the committee about the change, and the first thing we knew about it, we had a busload of politicians and press vomiting all over each other. It put them in an awful mood. All the press went home and wrote nasty articles about our town, and the politicians raised our taxes. He sounds like a dangerous man, said Cauldron smoothly. He is a dangerous man. My friend, Mrs. Potbelly, who works as deputy editor at Glorious Living, wrote an article about his dreadful clockwork giant. Inside the cupboard, David and Debbie stiffened. I may have read that, said Cauldron in a cunning manner. Didn't it go rampaging about the town, causing a lot of damage? It was terrible. It was a thieving sort of giant. It roared about the town, stealing anything mechanical that it fancied to upgrade itself. I have no idea what happened to it. Probably it's hidden in one of the secret hiding places that this old weird house is full of. The house is full of secret hiding places? Asked Cauldron, but he had overplayed himself. That's hardly any concern of yours, snapped Miss Polewidth, and I must say, for the caregiver, you don't seem too concerned about those children. Oh, forgive me, said Cauldron. I forget myself. It's just, you're so beautiful that my mouth ran away with me. Won't you come in and have a cup of tea? My housekeeper will make some. Miss Plank, would you come here, please? Jezebel Plank, who had not enjoyed hearing Cauldron Bubble tell Miss Polewidth she was so beautiful, came storming in. Yeah? What do you want? She snarled. We would like some tea and crumpets, said Cauldron. Toast the crumpets, please, and be sure to use a lot of butter. Jezebel opened her mouth, and then she shut it. Then she opened it again and said a rude word. Well, really, said Miss Polewidth. How uncouth! She narrowed her eyes at Jezebel. Haven't I seen you somewhere before? Jezebel looked like she was about to say a lot more rude words when Cauldron hastily hustled her into the library and slammed the door. He reopened it again, quickly to say to Miss Polewidth, Excuse me, my stuff needs managing. Then he slammed the door again. The library was behind the entrance boot cupboard. David and Debbie could hear the angry, whispery conversation quite clearly. Staff, so I'm staff now. Is that all I mean to you, Cauldron? Shut up. Can't you see I had to do this? That short fool clearly knows something about the house. It's so typical that sneaky Octavious would have a house with hidden rooms in it. But we can't waste time looking for these rooms. I need the information out of her. The giant is probably hidden in a secret room somewhere. So get with the program and make her some tea and crumpets. You said she was beautiful. That was all part of my cunning ruse. Well, it didn't sound like a cunning ruse to me. Sounded like you meant it. Cauldron groaned. For the first time since the children had met him, Cauldron seemed to be getting the worst of it. Be my housekeeper this one evening and I'll make it up to you. Will you endorse my psychic show in Berrima? Your what? Cauldron forgot to whisper. My psychic show at the jail. I'm taking a tour and a paranormal TV show through the jail next week. We're going to commune with dead convicts. It's going to be very uplifting. You're taking a TV show through the jail? I've already told you, Cauldron, that my career is every bit as important as yours. Now that I think about it, it's actually more important. Out in the entrance, Miss Polewidth was becoming restive. I think I better go, she called. No, boomed Cauldron in a bossy voice. Then he added, I can't bear to see you leave, my love. Jezebel glared at him. Then she kicked him in the shin. Make your own tea and crumpets, she shouted. And then she stormed out of the library, through the French windows, into the garden. Cauldron adjusted his tie and limped out to where Miss Polewidth stood impatiently tapping her foot. Well, Professor, she said. My housekeeper assaulted me and quit, said Cauldron. He looked like he expected sympathy. He was disappointed. Can't you make your own tea and crumpets? Asked Miss Polewidth sternly. This is Australia. I don't think it's quite nice for you to have servants. It all sounds rather feudal. Of course I can make my own tea and crumpets, said Cauldron crossly. But as a highly intelligent, very rich professor, sometimes I become so absorbed in my work I forget to eat. I am devoted to my research, of course, but bachelor's life is a lonely lot. Ooh. You poor man, said Miss Polewidth, hastily dropping her cold voice. I'll make you your tea. Come into the kitchen and I'll tell you some of the history of this house. It was built by an eccentric businessman who went entirely mad reading Agatha Christie novels. They say this house is riddled with sliding panels, secret staircases, and hidden tunnels. Their voices drifted off into the kitchen. 10 minutes later, they came back into the library. Of course, I don't know many of the house's secrets, Miss Polewidth continued, but I went to school with a girl who knew a girl whose father worked as a gardener here. She said there was a fat little angel carved into the mantelpiece, and if you pushed it, something would open. Shall we try and find the angel, Professor? Wouldn't that be fun? But Professor Snot didn't think it would be fun. He suddenly discovered he had a pressing piece of research to do, and she would have to leave. Oh, but Professor, we were getting on so well. And what about those children lost in Sydney? I'm sure they'll be fine, said Cauldron, as he almost shoved her out of the door. Children are hardy creatures. They can eat something from a rubbish bin and sleep in a Moreton Bay fig tree. What an adventure. Goodbye. and he slammed the door. Cauldron was very rough on doors. He never shut them if he could slam them. And with gleaming eyes, he began to stomp towards the library in search of a fat angel that if you pushed it, something would open. That is the end of chapter 7 of my ghostly mystery story, A Haunting in Berrima. Thank you so much for listening. Come back next time to find out what happens. Bye-bye.